Hi, I'm Liz Coley. Welcome back to Undercover Reading. We are reading The Captain's Kid, Chapter 8, Part 7. Take it one step at a time, I thought. Only 2 people aboard have to be convinced, Dad and Masuna. It could start right here. Dad, I began, let me tell you what was supposed to happen and why. And then, as if I'd rehearsed my case like the best advocates, the words tumbled out. I detailed all the research I'd done on climate and farming productivity, on the climate supercycles and the survey. I talked about the conclusion everyone agreed on, that allowing the Sequuino population to stay, sicken, shrink, and inevitably fade away was unacceptable. Relocating the Sequuinos was the only logical alternative. Dad listened with serious attention, added a little political history to round out my picture. You were very small, Brandon, when the whole relocation question was ready to blow up in our faces 5 years ago. You know how native Amerinds have been treated shamefully by the dominant governments and pushed around for centuries. We tried so carefully to avoid having this relocation cast in that light. This is a rescue mission, not a forced move. And Anna worked tirelessly to reconcile her people to moving and the Dine to welcoming them back. But Dad, I broke in. It's not a real welcome. You must know that. They may have voted to agree, but the Earth Elders, or at least some of them, sent River Swift and Whitesinger as spies and saboteurs instead of bodyguards. Masuna was set up. The whole mission was. I'm sure we can find out who was responsible when we return to Earth, Dad said, his face taking on that determined look of command. But that's not the point, I argued. They aren't entirely welcome, and anyway, there's another whole layer to this. Did you know Masuna said they're not going to give up their gene mods and revert future generations to human original? Can you believe it? They'd be the only non-naturals on Earth. Yes, I knew that, Dad replied. That's the whole reason the mission was classified as top secret from all but the Dine elders. Classified? What do you mean? I hadn't heard this angle before, but come to think of it, nothing I'd read anywhere had mentioned a rescue mission. The naturalist movement on Earth is still very powerful. During the furor over gene mod crops in the 20th and 21st century, they organized. Very well, in fact, to the point that the most needy nations banned crops bred for increased nutritional value and productivity. After that, they refocused their efforts to blocking cosmetic and athletic gene mods on humans, which I agree with philosophically. The ban on non-medical gene mods in system is largely due to their influence. But on the downside, naturalist propaganda left a lingering distrust against all visible human gene mods, even purposeful ones. So they would have blocked the mission. Is that why it was classified? Fear of that possibility made the government nervous that the naturalists would whip up public sentiment against the Sequuinos and make it impossible for them to land safely. It was felt that landing them and reintroducing them as another race of Amerinds was more likely to raise public sympathy. But they're more than just another race, I argued. They're almost a different species, and because of the way they look, people will think of them as a weird species or a gross species or a less than human species. Dad shook his head impatiently. People will just have to get over that. They can learn. Look how the issue of race has become practically non-existent on Earth in the last century. Get real, Dad. There's been so much intermarriage, no one has only one race anymore. Who's going to intermarry with a Sequuino? I still think people can learn, Dad insisted. I don't see Anna as any different from anyone else on the ship. Actually, Dad, you do. My announcement shocked him. What do you mean? Remember my science experiment? The one where I had all those people look at images of regular Earthers and loonies and different kinds of colonists, both cuddly and dangerous animals? Of course I do. I was your first subject, wasn't I? Did I flunk? He looked worried. As well he should. You can't flunk a psychology test, Dad, but you did react. See, there's this automatic stress, fear, adrenaline reaction that kicks in when people first see something that scares them. So you'd think that dangerous animals would be the worst, right? But it turns out that when you see a figure that's supposed to be human but looks too far off the standard, the stress reaction is even stronger. It's not your fault, it's your subconscious. It's hardwired into our brains somehow. He shook his head. But people adapt and get used to new things. They conquer their fears. Anyway, I've known Anna for years, and I'm extremely comfortable with Sequeunos. I patted his arm. He wasn't going to like this. On the surface, yes. But your biometric results tell a different story. You had a sort of low-medium stress response to Anna's image, just a little more than seeing a loony. He frowned. Yeah, I was a loony too. But Brandon, that's... Listen. With strange Sequeunos you never met, you're just like anyone else. You might seem calm on the outside, but inside your body is screaming, danger, danger at you. Really? Dad's lower lip pouted in concentration, and he scratched his head as he absorbed what it had taken me a while to accept, too. Yeah, sorry. I figured if you, of all people, had this reaction, even with all your self-control and knowing Anna and everything, these poor Sequeunos don't stand a chance with regular humans. And when I think of all those children and what's going to happen to them and how badly they're going to be treated, their parents are just going to tell them to ignore it and be proud of who they are. It just kills me. And then what about the next generation who have absolutely no chance to give an opinion? They're going to be born into this mess. Their parents' decisions are dooming these kids to rejection and misery. Dad's expression turned uncomfortable. That's an interesting way to look at it, Brandon. I never thought about it from the children's perspective. I'm sure their parents are just doing what they think is best to keep them alive. I know this sounds strange, Dad, but alive isn't always enough. And parents don't always make the right decisions. He stood abruptly, with hands on hips. He gazed across the garden, speechless for the moment. Then he dropped his eyes to the ground. Facing away from me, he muttered grimly, I imagine you're right. Parents don't always make the right decisions. We just make the best ones we can. He sighed and straightened his shoulders. Now what? Have you been through this with Anna? No, not yet. That's what the meeting was supposed to be about. We never got that far. I added with all the bleakness in my heart, if Whitesinger had just waited and listened, none of this would have happened. My eyes blurred as the scene replayed. I should have visited him too. I shouldn't have neglected him. Dad's arm dropped around my shoulder. He peered into my face. Please don't blame yourself for Whitesinger, Spidey. Reaching out to River Swift and turning him around was admirable, although you should never have gone behind my back like that. I ducked my eyes. I know, I'm sorry, and that's pathetically inadequate. He gripped my shoulder tighter and gave me a shake. Whitesinger was more violent, more fanatic to begin with, it seems. So what was supposed to happen? Tell me what you were going to propose. I swallowed hard. Here it is. But we have to find them a new world where they can start over. We owe them big. I was going to tell them that the survey was flawed, and we owe them a planet. But kiddo, that's not how it works. First of all, most of the habitable planets are already colonized, and the rest are assigned with colonists waiting for their turn at transport. Then there's a waiting list of approved colonists pending the discovery of new worlds. For an entirely new group, the process for being approved to join the waiting list can take years, a decade or more. Good habitable planets are a scarce resource. We just aren't finding these needles in a haystack fast enough. What's a haystack? I asked. Dad grimaced. It's a really hard place to find a needle, like space. We've searched a sphere around Earth out to 1,000 light years. It's harder to detect planets as the distance increases. Then we just have to get a vacant planet reassigned for the Sequeunos. They should jump the line and get priority. It's the right thing to do. Dad inhaled deeply. I have to agree with you there. It would be the right thing to do. His arms across his chest, he drummed his fingers on his elbows. Do you have any idea what it means to replan a mission midstream? We can't even get authorization from out here. We've got a 6-month communications time lag with the government. Was he considering it? He stared into the distance as he planned aloud. We'd have to go back to the Earth system, take the Sequeunos temporarily, and request the mission change as soon as we transition in system. Negotiate like crazy, refuel, resupply, recrew, and redeploy as soon as the SSC identifies a new location and the government and elders approve. Close, but no. Dad, what are the odds that they'd make the Sequayunos stay once we got back to Earth? Highly likely, Dad admitted. Right, that's what I figured. So we have to pick the place ourselves. I scratched my head. Something in my memory tickled, trying to resurface. I pulled it up, examined it, and grinned. Yes. Okay. How about this, Dad? I know for a fact there are 23 habitable vacant planets unassigned. His eyebrows rose. Oh? Yeah. They're quarantined. Nature preserves. Brandon, hear me out, Dad. Why can't the Sequayunos take care of a preserve? Hey, I like this idea. My spirit soared. It wouldn't be like a reservation. It would be a preservation. Dad smiled. Kiddo, I admire your spunk, your creativity, your loyalty. I truly do. But think about it. We'll never get permission. A strange thought crossed my mind as the loose strands came together. Dad? Oh, yes. I always thought you were something like a shipping line employee, but you aren't, are you? Captain is your rank, not a civilian job title. Am I right? Yes, you're right, he answered in a steady voice. Where are you going with this? I saw Dad with new eyes. The way I figure it, that makes you the top government for 50 light years. And you agree it's the right thing to do, yes? I snapped to attention, puffed out my chest, and saluted. Sir, I request an immediate change of mission plan for a vital humanitarian cause. Permission to look for a planet, sir? Dad shrugged in disbelief. You are something, Brandon Webb. Truly something. Just like your mother, he muttered. He stood and paced the path in front of us, head low. Finally, he spoke. Talk to Anna. She's moved to quarters 600. If she agrees in principle, then permission granted. You may look and report back to me. And I hope you will both speak for me at my court-martial. He rolled his eyes helplessly, but a dimple showed. Please come back for the next reading.